Good day, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. Want to make a little video today with all the abortion talk. Want to put out a little atheistic pro-life arguments out there. Yeah, baby. Pro-life without God. Sanctity in life. Good shit. Let's talk about it. Alright, mostly, really, we're just going to be dismantling the pro-choice argument. That's a perfect place to start. Choice. Let's start with that big old straw man argument. Oh, that argument is such a bullshit. It ain't about choice, okay? Let's look at the consistency of the choice argument, okay? Let's change the argument from abortion to death penalty, okay? Now, you're going to be on the side of the choice of government, right? I'll be pro-life and you're pro-choice of the government. That's the ultimate ideal, the ultimate morality for you is for government to be able to decide, right? They have a right to a choice. And that's your argument, okay? Well, I win that one because I'm actually on the morality of actually having respect for life, and choice has nothing to do with morality unless you're denying someone like the choice of free will, which that's not what we're talking about, right? The choice argument, it's totally disingenuous, and that's how they like it. They like to start off the argument disingenuous. I'm pro-choice. It's not pro-choice, and stop letting people say it's pro-choice. You're pro-aborting pregnancy, and that's like the least biased way to put it, right? If I wanted to be biased, I'd say you're pro-killing babies, right? That's how like a lot of pro-life people put it. But no, let's be unbiased here, and let's be real, and let's just say you're pro-aborting pregnancy. You're pro-terminating pregnancy, because that's really what it is. And it's nothing else. It's not a choice. The choice argument, disingenuous, fallacious, straw man argument, right off the bat, right? That's really their biggest argument, too. The next biggest argument, which is just as silly, is being forced to carry. I'm being forced to carry a baby. No, again, the logic is completely backwards on that, right? You got pregnant through your actions, and now you're not allowed to kill it. That's not being compelled to have it. They're two completely different things. They love that sophistry and that rhetoric. They go on the opposite side of the argument and work their way backwards. That's not how it works. You got pregnant through your own actions, and now you're not allowed to kill it. That's not the same as being compelled to have it. It's disingenuous, and it's another straw man argument. It's the same, and those are the two biggest and best arguments that they even have. Doesn't deal anything at all with morality. Doesn't deal anything at all with whether or not it's alive, whether or not, I guess it's really just that. It's really just the morality of killing and whether or not it's alive, because if it's alive, then you're killing it, and then if you're killing it, you need to justify killing it, right? You need moral justification for it. And that's really what the argument ultimately comes down to, right? Because we know that it's alive. If we found it on some distant planet in some other galaxy, we would be absolutely amazed that we found human life elsewhere in the galaxy. I mean, it's just as simple as that. The only other arguments that people have is that, oh, well, it can't take care of itself, like, right? Like, my 3-year-old can't take care of itself, let alone a 2-year-old, let alone a 1-year-old, let alone a newborn. It's a completely inconsistent argument. It's not consistent anywhere else. It's the same thing. If you have a disabled child, or you're the guardian of a disabled person, same thing. You don't have a choice to kill it. That's not how it works. And really the depravity of such an argument, right? It's really pretty depraved. Those are really like the biggest arguments right there. They're completely dismantled. They're disingenuous straw man arguments. I mean, the arguments from there, the only other argument that is somewhat moralistic is when they talk about babies having abnormalities and handicaps and all these types of things, right? And then like rape and incest and these kinds of things too. Right now, though, in this debate, those are fringe cases, and they're not important. We're talking about, by and large, the majority of abortions, basically just birth control for basically Black and Latino communities. That's basically what we're talking about. You know, there's another moral argument we could totally have another time. Is the moral justification for not allowing a life to come into this world that is most likely going to experience nothing but pain and misery and suffering. That's objective, you know, that's objective because you know it's going to have some sort of disorder or disease, right? So, and you know what that disorder or disease does, and you know that it's going to cause it unbelievable suffering and pain, right? Like, there's a moral argument to be made, and those distinctions are important, though. Those qualifiers are important because a lot of people like to say, oh, well, that baby's just going to grow up and, you know, be on the system and whatever anyway. It's like, now you're assuming, though. Like, now you're making assumptions, and you don't actually know that. And again, like, having a hard life is not the same as having a life of knowing nothing but pain and misery and suffering. Those are also two very completely different things. I mean, you can say it's immoral to bring a life into the world for the sole purpose of suffering. You can't say it's the same thing for bringing a life into this world that will have essentially all the opportunity available to it, right? So those are the main arguments right there. They're completely dismantled. It's a choice and forced to carry. The disingenuous, straw man, fallacious arguments. The other one with the abnormalities of the baby, fringe cases, right? We're talking rape, incest, threat to the mother's life, and a baby that will know nothing but pain and suffering. Those are fringe cases. That's not what we're talking about right now. We're talking about abortion by and large, right? The only other arguments they come for, I mean, it's amazing that this pro-choice argument has lasted so long because there's just absolutely no moral substance to it. There's absolutely no moral consistency to it. There's absolutely no logical consistency to it. I mean, they literally just try to name good things that have come from abortions. That's not how morals work. That's not how morality works, right? Like, Germany could talk about the good things of exterminating the Jews and creating a more pure bloodline in Germany. That's not justification for goddamn genocide. Like, people, get your fucking heads out of your asses. Seriously. The other arguments that they make is that it doesn't feel pain. Oh, well, when I'm killing you, you don't feel pain, so that's okay. No, fuck is wrong with you? Stupid ass argument. They're gonna do it anyway. Like, okay, well, now you've come back to the gun control side, so thanks for that. That's, like, yeah, people are gonna do illegal things anyway. That doesn't mean that you sanction it. Fucking idiots, right? But at the same time, right, like, you can't buy a gun because criminals will buy a gun anyway. It's super inconsistent argument from the lefties there. Mental health is better when allowed to have abortions. Yeah, if you make a huge mistake in your life and you are to be abrogated from your consequences, that is going to generally be very good for you. We're not talking about growing up and living a life devoid of consequences, right? We're talking about like making a big major mistake and not having those consequences. You know, a big mistake too. As if you're gonna have a kid and you're not ready to have a kid, it really is a big mistake. Especially if you're not just not ready, but you're not in a position to have a kid. Yeah, it's a mistake. And if you're allowed to wipe that mistake clean, it's gonna be pretty good. Again, that has nothing to do with morality though. Like, how easy your life is has nothing to do with morality. Nothing to do with it at all. Another one of their arguments, feminism, not feminism. Well, it's a feminist argument that women who are allowed to have abortions are able to be more competitive in the marketplace against men. They're able to make more money. So women should be able to kill babies because they can make more money. Thanks, feminism. That's a great argument. Again, financial disadvantage. Yeah, babies are expensive. Like, there are consequences for your actions. Naming the negative consequences of your actions is not an argument to have your consequences wiped away. That has nothing to do with it. And that's really what their arguments are. It's either some complete non sequitur, like it doesn't feel pain and people are going to do it anyway. We're talking about, like, we always have to keep in mind what the actual argument is, right? Like, my argument right now is that abortion is immoral, right? If your argument is going to be that abortion is moral, you can't go on to say that the fetus doesn't feel pain and people are going to do it anyway, and it's safer than going into a basement and having someone shove a wire hanger into your cervix. Like, these aren't moral arguments for the justification of abortion. Like, they're different. Like, you can say that there's a different moral argument there to be had for women who would go and risk their life just to kill the baby growing inside of them. That's a completely different argument that we want to go, but you got to separate these arguments, because that's what they like to do. They like to obfuscate these arguments and mash them all together. You get a big amalgamation of choice and bad consequences and repercussions, and that's not how morality works, though. Like, we need to come back to a position of morality and justify our choices with morality. None of these arguments get around justification for killing. We know that the justifications of killing are self-defense, right? Self-preservation, the defense of others. These arguments have nothing like that. No moral substance to it whatsoever. Unless they can tie on those fringe cases, right, of abnormalities in the fetus, disabilities, disease, right? They got to sprinkle those little fringe cases on there to have any sort of a semblance of moral argument, because nothing else here is a moral argument. Absolutely nothing. We're financially disadvantaged. Like, they're gonna do it anyway. It's safer. Population control. That's literally one of their arguments. This is eugenics. That eugenics is a major argument for these people. Let's also not forget, Black and Latino communities are by and large the communities that have abortions performed. Planned Parenthood was started in order to stop Black people from having so many babies. These are just forgotten, just with everything with the left, right? Just like how they forget their racist background of the slavery and KKK and the Dixiecrats. They like to just walk on up above, act like they're so morally superior to all those things that they just did a few decades ago. I mean, population control. They started abortions in order to stop Black people from propagating, and it continues today. And, ultimately, you got to ask yourself, if you're wrong, like, these are one of those questions where you can ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? And what are the ramifications of that? I think that's an important question when you're talking about something with the seriousness of life and taking life. Because if what we've been doing is wrong, we've committed the biggest genocide, mass infanticide for decades and decades. I mean, that's horrible. What does that say about our species? What does that say about us as a people if that's wrong? I mean, honestly. And, you know, I don't know if people are just too nihilistic and narcissistic to ask those kinds of questions for the most part. I mean, atheists, unfortunately, I've been in the atheist community for a long time now, and unfortunately, atheists, there's this pervasive nihilism, and it's kind of sad because, like, where do you get your morality from? You need to have some sort of objective morality. I ask the atheists where they get it from. I know where the religious people get it from. I've never heard any good moral justification, any good objective morality from atheists outside of, you know, the non-aggression principle, which is a good philosophy. I mean, that's where I get my morality from. I think it's a good place to start is to not hurt others, right? Don't hurt other people. And that's a philosophy that's applied ubiquitously throughout life and throughout the realm of reality, right? Like, you just don't hurt people no matter what you're doing unless they're gonna hurt you. And I think that argument applies to babies, ultimately. Just as the Bill of Rights says we have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, I don't see any reason why baby, you know, fetus, whatever you want to call it, does not also get those same rights. That's where my argument comes from. That's my moral argument that's ubiquitous across all of space and time.